Hi everybody and welcome to another comparison video here at the Merriam Pianos YouTube channel. My name is Stu Harrison. In today's video we are comparing the Estonia L190 and the Shigeru SK3. Possibly two of the most interesting 6-foot pianos on the market today. It is in a slightly more accessible price point than the stratospheric A192 Bechstein or the F212 Fazioli, and in a lot of ways just as interesting and as satisfying. So we're going to be doing tons of playing in the video, back and forth. We're going to be talking about some of those differences in design that might be contributing to those tonal characteristics that we're hearing, a quick discussion on what we're feeling in the action. So thank you so much for joining us. If it is the first time that you have seen us here on the channel, we would really appreciate if you subscribed and hit that notification bell so that you can come back and experience and enjoy more videos in the future. Without further ado, let's get started with the Estonia L190 and the SK3 right away. So by far the most interesting part of the acoustic piano industry to me, to learn about, to study, to play, is that section that is sandwiched right in between the very top of the factory-made pianos and before you get up to the stratospheric level of the undisputed champions. So we're talking from a price standpoint in the $40,000 to $90,000, $100,000 range. So we're below the C. Bechsteins and the Faziolis and the Bösendorfers, but we're definitely above the Kawai GX, the Yamaha CX, or any of the super high-end Indonesian pianos, say from the Ed Seilers or anything like that. So we're in this kind of upper mid-range section. And the reason why this is so interesting to me is that you find a tremendous amount of diversity of sound and of touch and of approach in these pianos. And in some cases, I think you also find some of the most underpriced pianos of the market, because in a lot of cases, the technology has allowed these companies to advance their pianos fairly quickly. They've stayed focused on a relatively small level of production, and so they can really amp up the quality and continuously evolve the pianos. But that happens a lot faster than the reputation tends to build itself in the marketplace. And so you find pianos in some cases which are dramatically less expensive than in a blind taste test, pianos that they might actually be compared to if people really weren't aware of the brand. And I happen to be in front of two of those pianos that I think fall into that category. And we had them side by side, and it was a video I was so excited to prepare for and think about, and even just be here playing next to one another, because it doesn't happen very often, and it's just so interesting to get them in the same room with the same acoustics and the same prep, and to start picking apart some of those tiny little differences, the nuances that you get with these instruments. And in some cases, the differences are actually quite stark. So on this side, we have an Estonia L190. And on this side, we have a Shigeru Kawai SK3. And as I said, to me, two of the most interesting 6-foot pianos on the market at any price point today. So we're going to obviously do some playing in the video and let you hear some of the differences between these two wonderful instruments, and talk about some of the things that contribute to those differences, and discuss, the touch as well, and hopefully leave you with a deeper appreciation and understanding for both of these pianos, if this is a category that you happen to find yourself in. I realize that the vast majority of people who are piano players may not ever have the budget or the means to be experiencing these pianos, so I realize that it's a select few, but I will probably never drive a Bentley or Ferrari or Lamborghini, and I still love learning about cars like that. So perhaps you fall into the same category. Some of you may actually have the means to shop for these, and in other cases, you simply really love just knowing what's out there. I'm going to start by playing each of the instruments, and then we're going to begin talking about the tone and the differences between the two. I'm going to begin on the Estonia. These two pianos are living on extremes, in my opinion, when it comes to a tonal approach. This is what I'm hearing. The Shigeru has always, to me, been a colorful sound. I've heard other people describe it as a colorful sound. There's tons of partials coming off of this piano. This is an instrument that has kind of been designed to give you as many sort of, harmonics as, say, a Fazioli might, but without really sacrificing any of the warmth or any of the brassiness that you can get down in kind of that mid to lower mid range. Shigerus have that in spades. So you have this, fundamental tone, the anchor of what you're hearing. Every sound has multiple harmonics and partials that make up the total experience, but the fundamental is the actual frequency, the starting point. And to me, Shigeru has been built to excite everything around that fundamental. And it does it very well. Down in this range, for example, there's so much brassiness and color coming out of your bass there that it almost kind of sounds like you're grabbing that lower octave sometimes, even when you're not. Listen to the same chord over on the Estonia. Sounds like the bottom note isn't there compared to there's just this tremendous amount of activation of not just the soundboard. I mean, like I said, you're getting so many colors. And then a super dynamic treble. It's clean, but there's tons going on. Let's listen to the same things going on with the Estonia. See, with the Estonia, it's like I'm getting more excitement around the fundamental pitch itself. For people who kind of know how pipe organs work, this is maybe the best way that I could describe it. The Estonia feels and sounds like I've got the world's best 8 and 4 foots at my disposal here. Whereas over here, I've got your 2 foots and your mixtures and all of this other higher end color. But the fundamental itself feels a little more hollow. And one of the areas that you can really notice is if you pay attention to the sustain, what happens to that sound the second you play it over, say, the next 10 to 15 seconds. When you play the Estonia, the sound just literally doesn't go anywhere. Like honestly, for the first 2 or 3 seconds, it doesn't actually seem like it decays at all. And that's that fundamental tone. Beautiful. Yeah, that's astounding. On the Shigeru, the initial bloom is larger than on the Estonia, but then it dives off so much faster. The fundamental of the tone kind of evaporates while you're still left with this kind of nice crystalline color still up around the note. To me, finding those kinds of differences is some of the most exciting moments that we can have as piano players. It changes how you approach the instrument. If you were a composer, it would change how you would write. So, what might be causing these differences? There's lots of constructional differences between these two pianos, and they completely link up with what we're hearing. One of the things that Estonia has done that legitimately was different, you know, every company likes to claim that this and that was innovative and the first out of the gate, but by and large, a lot of it is simply drawing on, other manufacturers out in the business who've already done this, who've already tried it, and is already considered best practice, and they're kind of just catching up. This is not the case with what Estonia did with their soundboards and with their ribs. And this, in my opinion, is what's contributing to this very different balance between upper partials and fundamental, and how this instrument sustains and blooms and activates itself. It's become a very, very common practice, particularly amongst higher end instruments, to taper the soundboard. That means as you get to the outer edges of the soundboard, it's thinner, and the inner is the only real thick part. And what that does is you're basically reducing the mass, you're increasing the elasticity or the flexibility of the soundboard. And so less energy is able to make it, flutter quite a bit. Now you still have to provide that soundboard with some stiffness, Otherwise, it's not going to be able to very reliably or effectively counteract the force of the bridge being pushed down on it. It would be kind of distorting like crazy. So as companies have thinned out the soundboard, they have increased the number of ribs. And ribs don't really have much of a sounding property to them. So you're taking away mass, which did have kind of a tonal contribution, and you're replacing it with stiffness that does not. And so I guess where Estonia was coming from is, well, let's do the opposite, because soundboards way back in the day never used to be like that. They used to be thicker right to the edges, and they would use as few ribs and as thin a rib as you possibly could, because if it didn't have to be there at all, it would be great. But you have to have something that maintains the crown. You need some stiffness there to to help resist all of that down-bearing pressure. So that's what Estonia has done. They've essentially turfed the whole concept or the whole trend, really, of the tapered soundboard. They've gone with something much more flat, and they were really celebrating this. And apparently now, Bösendorfer's latest designs, I think on the Vienna concert, have gone in this direction, I believe. The other thing they did was, rather than pre-bend the ribs, they've kept the ribs straight and kind of bent the soundboard down to meet it. So there's still a slight taper to the soundboard. It's just not as extreme as it used to be. And that, so you've kind of got counteracting forces between the soundboard wanting to straighten itself and curve the ribs, and the ribs wanting to keep themselves straight, and you've got some tension there, and that gets activated when you put vibrational energy into the soundboard. And so it takes a little more energy to get the soundboard really, truly, fully activated, and by the looks of it, Estonia may be using slightly larger hammers and a slightly heavier action weight as a result on this instrument to make sure that they do get that extra energy in to activate things. That's gorgeous. But then once it's there, there's more soundboard material to keep going. Shigeru has gone with what is now pretty commonplace, which is that tapered soundboard, and they've gone with super old spruce. It is Sitka spruce. They don't use the Ezo spruce that they used to. They just ran out of it. So I believe this is Alaskan spruce, kind of alpine, 1,000-meter kind of deal. So you've got a very, very high grain count on the spruce, quarter sawn, yada yada, basically best kind of a soundboard that you can produce out of North American Sitka spruce. Same deal as what New York Steinway is putting on their boards these days as well. But they taper it, and so it does sound like you get more color, you get more harmonics, because maybe the soundboard has a bit more travel to it. So there's a greater dynamic range right off the attack that you feel like you can get. But in the lower half of the dynamic range, it just feels like there's not as much there as over here. We go to the very top. It's kind of funny because it's almost the opposite. Now I'm getting a lot more unrelated harmonics as well as upper harmonics off this treble. Whereas on the Shigeru, I get tons of fundamental in the treble up here. So the effect is that you have a stronger attack here and a better sustain, but then it's reversed almost getting down into here. All the color, but a little less meat right in the middle. And as we said, we've already talked about that. Let's move on to action, because they definitely have a different sense of weight and they definitely have a different sense of speed. The Estonia requires a little bit more muscle in order to get fast passages happening. And as I said, I believe that could be because they're using a slightly bigger hammer to activate that slightly thicker soundboard. This is all just me kind of hypothesizing, speculating on what I know about the instruments and the effect that I get. So if at any point anyone who's watching this knows any different or better than I, or even somebody from Estonia or Shigeru, please chime in, because I love learning about this stuff, as you can probably tell. So a slightly heavier sense to the action on the Estonia. You have real ebony keys on most of the instruments. Some of them still have a capped key. This has solid ebony keys, which is nice. There is a bit more of a polish to the white key on the Estonia, but it's not a sticky key, so it's coated really nicely. On the Kawai, the Neotex keys on the white, which is a really nice grip to it. And then you have a very specific microtexture on the top of the black keys. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to beat the Millennium 3 action, really, when it comes to just isolating the experience of playing a key itself, separating it from everything else. They've done such a good job with the carbon fiber. This feels a little more traditional. Both of these pianos have larger and smaller cousins. There's a 168 below this. Above that, they've got two sub and 7.5 foot models and a concert grand. SK2 below this one and the SK3. Then there's SK5 above it, 6'7", SK6, 7 foot, and a 7'7" as well. They both come in a variety of different colors, although the Shigeru is usually just special edition. Otherwise, it's black, black, black. The two-tone Babinga, which you're seeing this kind of hidden beauty style on the Estonia, is something that I think is usually more regularly available versus just a special release. But both of these instruments just make a few hundred pianos a year. So if you have a chance to get into a showroom and experience either one of these, tell me what you think. Tell me if you were hearing some of the same things that I was hearing on this piano. And which one do you prefer? Because they're so beautiful in their own right, but really give you very different things as a player and as a listener to this instrument. So thank you so much for checking out another one of these comparison videos. Man, I've really enjoyed playing both of these instruments side by side, and I hope that you enjoy learning a little bit more about these two pianos. And mostly what we tried to give you in this video is just to play them and to hear them side by side and point out some of those gorgeous differences that these instruments present. If it's the first time that you've checked us here on the channel, Merriam Pianos on YouTube, please do subscribe and hit that notification bell. We would love to see you back for more videos, and comment. Let us know what you thought of the video and what you thought of those pianos. My name is Stu Harrison. We will see you back for more videos shortly.